Picture two people staring at the same overdue bill. One calmly cuts back, delays a purchase, waits it out. The other, under the exact same pressure, opens a shopping app and buys something they don't need. Same stress. Same bank balance. Completely different reaction. Here's the uncomfortable question this episode asks. What if financial anxiety doesn't make people more careful with money? What if it makes them worse with it? Not because they're irresponsible. Because of what stress does to the brain making the decision. This isn't just a personal finance quirk. It's a pattern that shapes household budgets, retirement savings, debt cycles, and how entire markets price products for people under pressure. If financial stress quietly pushes people toward impulsive spending instead of caution, then a huge amount of financial advice, just to be more disciplined, is aimed at the wrong target. The real target might be the environment that produces the stress in the first place. Understanding this isn't about blame. It's about recognizing a mechanism most people don't know is operating on them. For decades, the assumption was simple. People with less money spent less carefully because they lack financial literacy or willpower. But researchers studying scarcity found something different. When resources are tight, the mind doesn't relax its guard, it narrows its focus, almost like tunnel vision. This is what's called a scarcity mindset. Financial stress consumes so much mental bandwidth that it actually impairs judgment and long-term planning. The brain isn't broken. It's overloaded, prioritizing the immediate crisis over the future consequence. And that shift in focus, from long-term to right now, is where the paradox begins. Here's where it gets counterintuitive. Research into consumer behavior among financially stressed households reveals a paradox. The people with the least room for error often end up paying more, not less, for everyday goods and services. Higher fees, costlier credit, premium prices for convenience, because saving requires time and stability they don't have. This isn't a coincidence. It's a structural and behavioral pattern where financial stress and poverty combine to increase overall spending, not decrease it. Meanwhile, at the neurological level, chronic financial worry consumes the same mental resources used for self-control. Researchers describe this as a kind of depletion. Willpower isn't unlimited, and when it's spent fighting anxiety, there's less left over to resist an impulsive purchase. It gets worse before it gets clearer. Empirical studies, tracking financial anxiety over time, found a direct correlation with compulsive spending and lower quality purchasing decisions. Crucially, researchers distinguish this from intentional frugality. Someone choosing to cut back is not the same as someone whose stress is quietly driving them toward impulsive purchases they can't fully control. And field experiments studying poverty and financial uncertainty found that scarcity doesn't just narrow focus, it actively triggers short-term thinking and reward-seeking behavior. In other words, the brain under chronic financial pressure starts chasing quick relief, a purchase, a small pleasure, anything that offers immediate psychological reward, even when it deepens the long-term problem. So here's the shift in understanding. The old story was, poor decisions cause financial stress. The research suggests the arrow also runs the other way. Financial stress causes poor decisions. It's a loop, not a one-way street. The scarcity mindset narrows focus. That narrowed focus depletes willpower. Depleted willpower increases impulsive, short-term reward-seeking. And that reward-seeking often costs more, which deepens the very scarcity that started the cycle. Once you see it as a loop instead of a character flaw, the entire conversation changes, from why don't they just budget better to what is this pressure doing to the decision-making machinery itself. This reframing matters because it changes what actually helps. If the problem were pure carelessness, the fix would be more discipline. But if the problem is cognitive load and depleted executive function under stress, then the fix has to address the pressure itself, not just the behavior it produces. That's why research in this space treats financial stress as a measurable psychological and neurological variable, not just a moral one. The data shows patterns, not verdicts. And that distinction is the whole point. The hidden lesson here isn't poor people are bad with money. It's that money stress itself is a cognitive tax. It quietly drains the exact mental resources you need to make calm, long-term decisions. This can happen to anyone under enough financial pressure, regardless of income level, because the mechanism is about bandwidth and depletion, not character. Recognizing that the anxiety itself might be steering your spending, separate from your actual values or goals, is the first step to interrupting the loop. So what do you do with this, practically? Not a rigid plan, just an awareness shift. When you notice a spending urge right after a stressful money moment, a bill, a bad account balance, a tense conversation about finances, that's worth pausing on. Not because the purchase is automatically wrong, but because research suggests that's exactly the moment when judgment is most likely to be running on depleted resources rather than full clarity. Separating the decision from the moment of peak stress, even briefly, gives the long-term thinking part of your brain a chance to catch up. This isn't about shame. It's about timing. If this reframed how you think about your own spending, or someone else's, that's the whole purpose of this series. Finding the hidden mechanism behind decisions we usually judge on the surface. Subscribe to The Hidden Lesson for more stories where psychology, money, and human behavior collide. And if you've caught yourself in this loop, you're not broken, you're human under pressure. Understanding the loop is how you start to step outside it.